Hi, Nikki.
Hi,
Okay,
hi, Lauren. How are you?
good. So if you're just joining us on Facebook Live, I am Lauren Van Hemert, and I am here with the fabulous and fit and fun Nikki Torres. And we're going to talk about the intersection of mindfulness and creativity and movement, which I never quite bought until recently. So I'm buying into it now for sure. But before we get into that, Nikki, I kind of want to talk about how you're doing. You are, for people who don't know, married to Patrick Torres, who I adore, the artistic director of Raleigh Little Theater.
I do too. We have that.
and and you have two little girl, two daughters, right?
Yes, fourth grade and first grade.
So how's it going? How's pandemic school going now that school started?
Well, we've been sort of easing into school. We've got orientation last week and this week, which for elementary school students doesn't equate to too much. So my first grader, she's got like one mandatory 30-minute block a day and then one like optional lunch bunch. So she is her 30 minutes and she's like, I love school. This is easy. So I've tried to say, well, next week it's going to be a little different, but she won't know until next week, and then it's going to be all day, every day, and we'll just see. We just every day's an adventure, right? So we'll just roll with it and see what happens.
We're rolling with it. That's like the whole mantra for this whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I do want to talk about mindfulness and movement and creativity, but before I jump into that, you are a former actor. That's what it says on the Folk Fitness website. So tell me about your theater career. Is that how you and Patrick met?
It is actually. We met in college, and I found theater in college. I felt I sort of came to theater late because my high school just didn't have any sort of program or anything, so it wasn't really a thought in my mind as an option. Um, I have always sort of been a mover, not necessarily like an athlete, but a lover of movement, and sort of always really enjoyed kind of seeing what adventures I could get into, like that involve movement. So that may be sort of more sport-like, even though I wasn't very good, or it may be like rappelling off bridges in the middle of the night with my friends. So those were the kind of things I did in high school. And then when I got to college, my freshman year, I took a class called Acting for Non-Majors, and was totally hooked. Like it was this thing that felt so impossible and equally impossible and absolutely wonderful, like something I just couldn't. I had to do. So jumped into theater in college, and yes, that's where I met Patrick while I was an undergrad, and he was getting his master's in directing um, at the University of Southern Mississippi, and then just continued to pursue theater from there up into my 30s until having children. And then your whole, most moms know, whether they continue to do the same thing or do a totally different thing, everything sort of changes, so it becomes like a hard like pre and post. So I'm not, I think it's easier to say I'm a former actor. I haven't necessarily given it up entirely. I did jump into a show for the first time since having kids, I guess in the beginning of 2019, and it was a fun experiment that was very difficult, and I will
What
hopefully.
were you in? What did you do?
I was in Rebecca Bloom's Measure for Measure at Raleigh Little Theater.
I saw that show.
Oh, well, you've
I
seen.
enjoyed that show.
I was Aeschylus, so yeah. I had a fabulous robe. It was very fun. So it was fun to kind of jump back into that. But these days, the things that I love about theater the most, like creation, obviously, but then also the community aspect, and then for me personally, the movement of it. When I was in Washington D.C., I was involved in a movement-based theater, so really sort of fell in love with creating specifically with my body. And those three things, creation, movement, community, I now get to do every day in fitness. So I'm still doing a lot of those same things. I've just changed the form. So, we get to play in a different way. So, which is a lot of that's what creativity is, right? It's like taking it and then rebirthing it into something else. So.
And there is a communal aspect to folk fitness that I'm really drawn to. And we're going to talk about that too, because I think that's a big part of health and wellness is finding that tribe, finding your people.
Yeah,
Do you miss, you were in Measure for Measure, but have you missed being on the stage, or are you going to do more shows?
I definitely want to do more shows in my life. I think that at this moment in time, the girls are older now, so that certainly makes it easier. They're not super old. There's still a lot of, a lot of caretaking that needs to be done, even if it's just kind of being in the same space. And then, I have a small business, and any small business owner knows that there's a lot that goes into that. So it was a really magnificent experience being a part of Measure for Measure. And gosh, the people are so incredible. I met a lot of new people or people that I got to meet in new ways, because I've always just been Patrick's wife, at events. And this was like me actually getting to get to know people. So that was really fun. And so I would love it. This is the perfect example of what I'm talking about, Lauren. When we finished, I was exhausted, and I do a lot of early morning fitness classes. So I was waking up at like 5:30 and then doing Measure for Measure until like, between 10 and midnight, depending on what we were doing. And I was tired, and Patrick sort of pulling that same schedule with the girls, and and is tired as well. And I thought, I'm not going to do this again for a long time. And then we finished the show, and then an audition notice came out for a different thing, that looked so amazing. And I immediately thought, oh, I wish I could audition for that. I thought, I'm crazy. Like, this is what theater does to you. It makes you a crazy person. So yeah, so yes, definitely again, someday, not right now.
Okay. Well, nothing.
Well,
nothing is happening right now. I cannot wait till something happens, but when the pandemic hit, it's kind of funny. I just saw something a few weeks ago on CBS Sunday morning. Everybody was making bread. I don't know why I was not making bread, but
I was not making bread either.
It seemed like a lot of people were making bread.
Yes.
And it seems to have been, I have seen this in my house. It really, this whole thing, this self-isolation and quarantine has been kind of a perfect storm for people who struggle with weight, not to mention people who struggle with emotional issues. This has been really tough.
Yeah.
A lot of us, I'm an emotional eater, so I will turn to food for comfort. Gyms are closed. At least, I used to have the gym where I could say, okay, at least I can go there, but it's much harder to exercise at home. Lots of distractions. So talk to me from what you've seen with your clients and people taking your virtual classes, how this pandemic has affected our physical health and our emotional health.
Oh, that's a great question. First of all, I would say you're absolutely not alone. I think that everything you described with your situation, probably most people watching are sitting there going, yep, that's me, and including myself, for sure. And, there's just so many different factors in the weirdness and the stress. There's so many things, right? For me, even on a personal level, just like separate from running a business, when I was able to pretty quickly pivot and move my classes online, probably about a week after we got into quarantine. And then at first it was mostly the people that I, was already seeing, and then it quickly began growing to a lot of other people. And I think I could probably speak for most of us. I could certainly speak for myself that I think just as much as having that outlet for exercise and movement and what those things do to your overall wellness, I equally appreciated being able to turn on the screen and see all the faces and say, "Hey, how are y'all doing today?" And everyone go, and then we'd have that moment, that it might be 3 or 5 minutes, but we'd have that time to everyone share, what's going on in their household and laugh or, commiserate. And then we jump in and we're like, well, let's just do it, And so I think it helps give you this mindset of, yes, this sucks, but here we are together and we're just gonna truck on, we're gonna power through. And I think there's a lot of things that happen with that, along with the real physical, biological things that happen to us when we exercise that affect things like mood and anxiety and productivity. Like those are real, like studied things. Along with that, you finish a workout and you've succeeded in something already with a group of people. And, that's a pretty beautiful way to start in the middle of a pandemic. We all need those successes.
I agree, and I think seeing people, I started these live videos just so I could see people because I was just missing going to the theater and seeing people in the lobby. And so just being able to connect with people online virtually, it seemed like the next best thing. That's where these videos were born out of, was me
Yeah,
wanting to have chats with my friends.
that's absolutely, yeah, that's great. Absolutely.
So I think the connection is key. I I find it really depressing. So you have class fans on our Facebook chat. Jill says the workout is freaking great, and Benji says the classes are saving her soul.
Oh my gosh.
And Jill also said that the one thing she loves about your boot camp class is the human contact. So I definitely think the human contact. If you went to a gym and you took a class in the gym, there's all sorts of interaction and socialization. So
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I would say too, I think as a fitness professional, my bent and my focus has always moved more towards overall wellness, and that sort of thing. But I will also say, when I'm in class and sort of just as I've been rolling along, I'm also thinking about, like, people are coming to me because they have real goals and I don't want to disappoint them, and we got to progress and we got to add the weight, and how do I mix this up in a way that's going to be effective? And for me at home, it's not that's been thrown out the window. And certainly now that we're moving into month 6, I think we're circling back. But the focus really does move into, like, what do we need to do for us to have a little bit of fun together? What do we need to do to, like, breathe heavy and laugh and have a good time? So sometimes that means we do sort of a more typical workout or a really hard workout. Sometimes it means that we throw in like a whole day of just mobility and flow and ease into it. And some days that means that we take, like, board games, because I'm a board game lover, and make a workout out of it. So have you heard of, since Jill's here, well, Jill and Benji, they're very competitive when it comes to things like board game workouts. So we've done a bingo workout. You can ask Benji about that. And we've done a workout. Have you heard of the board game called, I think it was Mastermind? You have to crack the code. Anyway, Jill was fabulous at that one too. And so we took, I that's what I enjoy doing, is taking inspiration from anything from, like, drinking games to board games and saying, well, how can we make this into a workout? It's easier to do in groups, but it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
well, and what I do love, so I mean, I told you this before we went on. I hate exercise. It's a chore. I mean, I literally have to pencil it in and say, okay, I'm gonna make the time to do this. But what I'm really loving about being part of the folk fitness group on Facebook is there's a lot of fun involved. You make it fun, I, like I told you before, we're doing this bingo game now, and Oh, Benji says no one won bingo. But we're doing a bingo game now. And one of the things was like dance around your kitchen while you're making um, dinner. And what I loved about that is I was moving and I almost didn't know I was moving. Music was on, and then my family came down and I was like, okay, I'm going to turn the music off now because we're ready to eat. And my husband's like, no, I'm kind of liking it. We're all kind of getting it. So I love kind of the fun. You also have this group of people, this group fitness. It's like a group fitness thing. So I think the accountability piece and the fun piece are two aspects of it. So tell me how, even if people aren't part of folk fitness, how they can work the fun and the accountability into their, or finding their squad, finding their support system, finding their team, whatever they want to call it.
Right.
How, what would you recommend people do for that to get started, to get
Yeah,
going?
that's a great question. Um, I think I would start answering that back at the creativity piece. And we talked a little bit about this before we started too. You can think about creativity with kind of what we just said. Oh, I make bingo into fitness, right? Now that might really appeal to some of you out there. And if so, come join our team, right? And there's other people that are like, what? I don't even know what she's talking about. That doesn't even make sense. Yuck. I would never want to do that, right? I would never want to be a part of a tribe, right? And so I'm going to back it further from what I do and talk more broadly about creativity as it relates to perspective, because I really think that there's a strong relationship between the idea of creativity and the idea of perspective. And I guess one way to sort of understand what I'm even talking about is if we think about how an artist might view materials versus the way anyone else might, right? So I might have a bunch of junk in my backyard, and an artist might look and say, oh my gosh, like I see a window pane and some leftover paint and some scrap metal, and I see my new masterpiece, right? And anyone else might look at that and say, gosh, I got to take that junk to the dump. So that's just a difference in perspective. And we all come at pieces of art like that. We can all see the same play or the same statue, and we're going to have a different experience based on our personal experience. So for me, personally, I think I would say, like I already mentioned, I love board games. I really just love strategy. I like strategizing about things. I think I do a pretty good job, like objectively sort of living this examined life, or looking at creative problem solving, like logic problems and things like that. And I would pose the idea that perhaps that those tools, right, creative thinking, at looking at problems in a different way, may be perhaps equally important to like finding that health and wellness routine as eating well and working out, right? Because what's going to work for me may not work for you, but there's a solution out there. And I think a lot of times what happens is we get locked in like a loop, one loop of like, this is what the thing is in this box, and I don't like that box, so I'm not going to do it, right? And I think that a lot of us can very easily do that, especially in the realm of health and wellness or fitness and working out. You might feel really adept in some other area, but when it comes to this thing, this piece, I don't like that box. And so it's a matter then of saying, well, can we play differently? Like, can we play differently in the box, or can we change the box? And like I said, that may not look like bingo, but it can look like something, right? So I'm going to give you a little, I meant to say, come prepared with a piece of paper and a pen. Do you have that around somewhere? If you don't, you can just think about it. So someone recently brought this little problem, this logic problem to my mind. I'd seen it years ago. You draw 9 dots in a square. I got my answer down here. So you draw 9 dots in a square like that, right? So that's what you got. And your task is to take 4 lines and connect all 9 dots. So you want to try to just use 4 lines only and connect those dots. So I don't know if you, we don't have to take the time.
Okay, now I have a pen.
Okay.
And I have my paper.
So everyone that's watching can try to do this as well. You're going to just make a square with 9 dots. You get 4 lines, and you got to connect all the dots.
With 4 lines.
With 4 lines.
See, this is not, my husband's an engineer. He'd look at this, he'd figure it out like that. I'll be like, here all day.
So, and I'm drawing it out again here, and then I'll just show you. So I'm going to go ahead and just for speed, I'm going to go ahead and just give you the secret. It's impossible to do. Okay. You can't, if you're playing inside the box, you can't do it. Except I didn't tell you had to stay inside the box, right? It's easy to assume, but look what you can do. If you start here, if you go past the box, that's 1. And then through the box here, that's 2, right? Then over, that's funny, I did it wrong. Hold on. So wait, hold on. I'm going to show you because I've got it written out here in case I messed it up. So we're going to go down, up, over, and then down again. But you have to go past the box. All the sides, right? So I think that's the idea. Like that's really what we're talking about with creativity, right? Is you have to find the thing that works for you. So for me, that likes board games, this is what I do. And these are the people that I want to find to have fun with. But for instance, my brother, he works out a long time, but he's very analytical and he likes spreadsheets. And so he likes to do the same workout consistently and then track his progress on spreadsheets. You know what I mean? So everyone's got to find the thing that works for them. What I would say is you don't stop trying just because the things that you've found before didn't work for you, because there's something, right? You found kitchen dancing and you loved it, and now that's a piece that you've got in your back pocket every time you're in the kitchen.
Well, and I also think that when we talk about fitness, I don't know why, but there's this idea that it has to be perfect. There's a perfectionism tied to fitness, which is easy to abandon if you're not doing it right or you don't feel like you're doing it right. I think in a time of COVID, and I've seen it in my own house, my husband will be like, oh, I've already screwed up my diet today, so I'll just pick up where I left off tomorrow. I'll just binge the rest of the day or whatever it is.
Right.
And so I think kind of giving us permission to be outside of the box and not be perfect and play, because when you're playing, that's not associated with perfectionism, I think.
Right. Yeah.
In my brain at least makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I mean, there's so many stigmas, I think, that our culture has put around fitness. There's what you're talking about with perfectionism, absolutely. And then just sort of feeling like it has to be a certain way, it has to look a certain way, it has to have a very specific outcome. When the truth is, I just heard another fitness professional, I was in a workshop, and they said something like, no one's life has ever been significantly improved by bigger biceps. With the idea being, so often when we approach fitness, we imagine we have one set of metrics in mind and one sort of desired outcome, and that equals success, right? And that's not wrong. Like having a physique goal is not a bad thing. Wanting to look and feel, or especially look a certain way, is not bad. But those numbers on the scale can do things with your mind. And in reality, if we're looking at fitness as in like what is, if I move into this as being a regular part of my life, like how much more will I be able to do the things that I really love? Will it allow me to do it more pain-free, more efficiently, with less thought, with more breath, with more energy? Can I move more joyfully through my days? Can I interact with the people I love? Can I, take these superpowers that I've been given and put them out into the world better? Yes. Okay. Then that seems like a much more meaningful goal to pursue, right? So again, it's that perspective shift of why are we doing it? And I think also along with sort of that perspective shift, and your husband, that's he's not alone in that. So I'm not just tagging him, but I will point out that idea, because it's so easy just to go, oh well, I blew it, it's over, right? And I would challenge that thought with, instead of the idea of all or nothing, begin to think always something, right? So we can't always be dialed in perfectly at a 10, but we can always do a little bit. And if we're every day thinking, well, I'm going to try to do just a little bit better, then that's much more attainable, right? Then I have to do it all. Because the reality is, if we're consistently making small changes over time, that's really going to be a bigger bang for our buck than if we go like, head first, headlong at a 10 for 28 days, and then we stop it all again, right?
It's really interesting. So prior to COVID, I had set my own kind of mindfulness movement goal, because I think as women, and we do have men watching, so I don't mean to exclude the men, but I think as women, we're caregivers, we're caring for our families in some cases, our husbands. Some of us are running a small business. In my case, I'm also helping care for my parents, and I kind of come last. And my New Year's resolution was, okay, you're probably not going to ever change that. You're probably not going to like wake up one day and go, okay, I'm first, everyone else is below me. That's probably not going to happen.
Right.
But my New Year's resolution was do one thing for yourself every day. And I had a list of things I could pick,
That's a
whether it
good
was
idea.
like meditation, or write what you're grateful for today, or do yoga today. And so every day I was like, if I can just wrap my brain around doing this one thing, which doesn't take very long,
Yeah.
then I've succeeded. And most days I would do more than one thing. And then COVID hit and kind of put a whole wrinkle in this. But as I've been doing your little challenges over the last couple months, I'm like, this is just one thing. It's just a
Yeah.
doable one thing.
Yeah.
And so I love this idea of just making small, little, doable, not, I have to lose 70 pounds, not these long term crazy goals that seem unreachable. Just, okay, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to drink more water today, or
Right.
whatever
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm with you. There's a quote that I've used ever since moving to Raleigh and starting Folk Fitness, which is that, Folk Fitness believes there's strength in numbers, power in fun, and that the smallest changes can make the biggest differences.
Mm.
And and so you were asking about that, like, how does somebody find that fun and accountability? I think, the fun factor will be different for, different people. And so you want to just keep looking. But the accountability, I mean, in some ways that would be different too. And it really just depends. Some people can find that in sort of like what we're talking about, like come visit a class and come see what you think, come join our little tribe, either online or virtual, maybe one day back again in person. But some people may find that in just one other person or a family member, like, and find it in those ways. But however those pieces go, happen, the fun and the accountability, I agree with you that, well, and I'm saying it too, we're speaking it together, that
Yes.
the fun, the accountability, and then just the consistent small changes really begin to add up. And it's funny because in fitness we think, oh, it's got to be this, right? But in so many other ways, like, we don't have necessarily that same expectation. In other avenues, or in our job, or with our savings, we recognize that it's about small steady changes. But for some reason, it's easy to look at sort of it and go, oh, this is a big problem and it needs a big solution. And, you know, and to be honest, just side note, I'm not completely dogging big changes because they have a time and place. And there's definitely some people that, you know, maybe they've been chipping away for years and they go, this isn't working. And so sometimes it's not a bad idea. It's kind of a creative idea to say, well, what's the opposite of what you've been doing? Try that, you know, and maybe that's what does it. Or it might help you just kind of to kick off and feel motivated because you see, you know, what you're looking for. But in general, when you're talking about lifestyle habits that you're really looking to make a long-term life change that's going to, you know, have you moving for the rest of your life in a way that you feel good about, most of the time that's more of like a slow and steady progress, you know, because it takes a long time to form a habit and change a habit and make it feel like it's who you are. You know, part of our habit change is about our identity change. And so you got to give yourself time to form a new identity so that now Lauren says, hey, I'm someone who exercises regularly and I like it, you know. So, and that takes some time.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever get to the point where I say, Niki, I just love exercise. You'll know that I have either fallen on my head or you completely brainwashed me because.
Well, you know, I will tell you this. I don't absolutely hate exercise, but it is very difficult for me. What is much more difficult for me to get motivated to do it alone. Even you know, I've created the type of fitness program that works for me. You know, it's community driven and it's fun. There's variety. And so if I'm being asked to do the same workout every day by myself, that's a tough sell for me as well. So, you know, you're not alone in hating exercise, but you may find something that you find more palatable, like that cheese on broccoli idea.
Yeah, cheese on broccoli. Or, you know, I did tell you, I think one of the lovely things about me moving more is my daughter has come for walks with me. And when we're walking, she can't be on her phone. So we're actually talking.
Yeah.
You know, my husband's come on walks with me and we have that time together where we're connecting and communicating and it goes by really fast. So those things are the perks of it for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. And, you know, I mean, I think that's what you just said is a really great example of how self-care is also family care. You know, like the better you are, the better your family is. And as you go on, and you're leading the charge, right? So as you start making these changes, everyone is going to kind of follow in line.
Follow through, follow in. Well, and so it's really interesting. I interviewed somebody else from Coloring Broadway, and she makes these coloring sheets. And she connects coloring and mindfulness. They're coloring sheets for adults, so it's all about coloring and mindfulness. And before I interviewed her, I sat down and I said, okay, I got to color one of these sheets because I'm interviewing her tomorrow and I want to have one done. So I sat down and I realized for myself, as much as there's a perfectionism tied to fitness, there are perfectionism type things tied to creativity. We don't even allow ourselves to be creative and play.
Yeah.
I was so concerned about the colors that would go together and coloring in the lines. And as I got more and more tired, because these are pretty detailed coloring sheets, I was like, oh, I don't care anymore. And as I stopped caring, I actually got into that mindfulness that she was talking about.
Wow.
So I think with looking at fitness and looking at creativity, there's some sort of, we have to let go a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, your story reminds me of my favorite audition story, or one of them. I'm a horrible auditioner. I get so nervous and I just like, although I will say I gave a great audition. Well, I don't know how Rebecca feels but for Measure is because I thought, I don't even know if I should be doing this. I don't know if I want this. And so I just went in there and just, like you said, let go. And same thing happened to me in college. I, had just given lots of bad auditions, and, not really, I was about to graduate, and I just hadn't really had a part on their main stage that I felt like I could really, be excited about. And I went into my last semester of my senior year, and I just thought, you know what, forget this, forget it. I don't even care. I'm almost gone. And then it just, bam, and so I agree. I think a lot of times we almost need to get to that point to say, whatever. And then you can say, then you get out of your head and out of the box, and you leave room for other possibilities.
Well, and that's what I think it is opening yourself up to possibilities, because we're also, in this power struggle with ourselves, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of artists and creatives right now um, who really feel stuck. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
they're missing the theater, they're missing their art, they're missing their audience. I spoke to one artist, and she was really interesting. We were talking about writer's block, and she said, well, Lauren, I don't have writer's block. She said, I have living block. It's usually something in my life that gets in the way. So talk to me about what artists and creatives can do to get themselves moving, which might connect them to them becoming more creative, or becoming creative again, or tapping into that creativity they think they lost, kind of getting through that life block.
Wow, that's a really interesting way to put it, a life block. I think even for people who are not artists, that's definitely, and I think for me, one thing that I try to keep in mind is that there's a real ebb and flow to this. So like I can find that place where I'm moving through that life block, and I'm finding the breath, and I'm being grateful, and I'm doing all the things that make me go, you know what, I'm resilient, and we're going to get through this, and this is just one moment in time. And then, and then that comes down again. And so I think maybe separately from your question, some of it for us is, maybe it can be helpful to recognize that that's just what it's going to be. I mean, it's life anyway, but certainly now I think the highs and the lows, especially the lows, feel more predominant. So just knowing to ride that ebb and flow, and knowing that even as it goes low, we can continue to move through, again, with that slow and steady change. I think that would be one thought. I think, it's easy for me to talk about fitness and wellness completely, like together, or movement and wellness, as if that's all wellness is. When, of course, wellness is going to be comprised of so many other things. And you mentioned, mindfulness, and, things like meditation, or, gratitude, like all of those are sort of part of this puzzle as well. And so one thing, and certainly movement, I think, like you're sort of alluding to, can be part of that puzzle piece to just get us thinking again, because I think we do move better, think better as we move. But we don't want to lose those other important wellness pieces too. I think that, I think a lot of the barriers to creative flow are often wrapped up in things like, like you're talking about, sort of this stress. First of all, I heard someone say just today that they were describing a situation going on with their daughter and COVID, and how it's affecting her business. And she said, I just have to recognize that the floor has been raised on low level stress. So all of us, even on the good days, even the sort of low level stress that we all run under, that's higher, right? And so I think recognizing that sort of chronic stress, and then how that then also might affect our sleep, and lead to anxiety and depression. I think all of that is wrapped up together. And I think, you know, looking at that through the lens of things like mindfulness, it can certainly be helpful, but also just movement without much of an agenda, it can be helpful. You know, whether that is yoga that you feel like, stretches that you feel comfortable moving through, or just stretches, or sort of something gentle, or just kind of moving, right? Getting yourself, if you don't feel like you have the bandwidth to figure it out or choose something for yourself, just getting yourself connected somehow to your body and giving your brain some space to relax. You know, all of those things that we've always heard, you know, like you got to unplug, stuff like that. It's really easy, I think, these days to disconnect ourselves from our body, to, you know, spend all day writing on, you know, typing on the computer or doing Zoom calls and forget that we are animals that are living inside of a body. So I think that any time that we can stop long enough, ground ourselves to recognize I am a, you know, look at this amazing thing my hands can do. Look, I am seeing with these eyes, you know, how does that happen? You know, just kind of recognize the miracle of our bodies, and then find ourselves in movement, in even like free movement, and sort of seeing what happens. I think some of that can help, you know, just bring ourselves back to who we are and being in our bodies.
Well, and certainly ease the stress. You know, I think so much of this is connected to sleep. You know, when I move more during the day, I'm going to probably sleep better that night, which
Yeah.
means that I'm going to wake up a little bit more refreshed. It's like a cyclical
Oh, absolutely.
thing.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so interconnected. I co-presented with at the Women's Theater Festival with somebody when we were talking some of these similar things, and yeah, I won't go into all of that, but I will reference one book that I pulled from a lot in that workshop, called Spark: The Revolutionary New Science of Exercise in the Brain. And he talks a lot about this, just sort of the biological and neurological things that happen to our bodies when we are bodies under stress, and how movement, inserting movement into that, and exercise, or like raising our heart rate, how that can affect our response to stress, even without sort of the thought behind it, you know, that I've got to calm myself, or, you know, meditate, or, you know, whatever. So absolutely, it's so interconnected. And I think in general, I already said this, but spend so much time disconnecting, like we compartmentalize ourselves. And it, you know, just to, I think, have that moment each day where we just find ourselves in our bodies, you know, like ground ourselves and go, here I am, you know, right here in this room, you know, and give ourselves a moment to recognize that.
To breathe and just be present. I love that.
Yeah.
I also feel like tracking for me, I'm going to, you know, I'll just say for me, tracking kind of important. And it's not just tracking what I eat, it's not just tracking my exercise. You know, it's not just saying on a daily basis, Niki Torres is trying to kill me, because that's my mantra over the last 2 months. So I'll come home sweating. I'm like, oh, this is Niki trying
I'll take that. I'll take
but I think tracking food, tracking water, tracking exercise, and then what I've been trying to be more mindful of is tracking how it all makes you feel. So, okay, today I exercised, so I feel this, versus on a day that I didn't exercise, I feel this way. And so I've been trying to make those connections so that I kind of can remember that for the days I really don't want to exercise.
So I love that, Lauren, and I'm going to be stealing that. So so you just know,
feel away.
I really love that, because I, you know, I've been talking so much about like, woo, fun, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, if you have specific goals, you know, there is some down to business stuff that is helpful to do. And particularly like if you've got either big goals or like a timeline, and you really, you know, need to know, well, all of that tracking is just giving you information to play with, right? It's giving you information and feedback. And you really, I mean, that's so beautiful, because a lot of times, you know, we're tracking our food, which can be really important, because a lot of times we're doing things that we don't even recognize that we're doing. But then we're sort of, the only other metric is oftentimes the scale, which is so fickle and is not even always the most accurate assessment of what's going on. And so really looking at how you're feeling each day, it really does make a difference. I mean, it's not just like oh yeah, that would feel nice. It's for real. I mean, isn't that what we're going after, right? You know, like, shouldn't we be looking for like, what's going to give us more joy in our life? What's going to allow us just to enjoy ourselves and enjoy the people around us more? Absolutely.
I totally agree. I think having that connection between the way, for me, again, you know, it's all individual, but making the connection between how I'm feeling and whatever physical, because I don't like it. So I have to kind of ration with myself, like, okay, if you want to feel this way, then you've got to do this. This is,
Right.
so, um, talk to me a little bit about setting fitness goals during a pandemic, because you know, again, I think a lot of us tie success to productivity or goal setting. You know, we're list makers and that kind of thing. Is it is it valuable to set goals? And what are some realistic goals? You know, I don't think saying, for me, if I said my goal is to run a marathon, that's probably not going to happen in any reasonable amount of time that's going to keep me motivated. It might happen a year from now, but it's not going to happen a month from now. So what are some realistic, I guess, goals that people can set, or how should people approach goal setting during a pandemic?
Okay. Well, yeah, absolutely. And you know, asking a personal trainer if there's value on goals, absolutely. Like, I love setting goals. Like, some people shun New Year's resolutions, but I'm like, oh, it's just a whole holiday where I get to set goals. You know, so but I find them to be really great, sort of ways to kind of focus in on a thing. And even if the goal doesn't happen exactly like I thought, or if it changes, you know, it still gives us a direction to move in. And so I really believe a lot of times, and whether you're talking about fitness or any other, you know, issue in your life, so often you can't know what the answer is until you just start moving. Like, you have to go first and then you figure it out, right? And so I could sit back and think, oh, I want to start a business, and you know, and I'm going to think through all these things. And the reality is, you have no idea what's going to happen until you just do it, and you make a lot of mistakes, and then you learn from it, and then you try new things, right? So I would say that goals get to be like that too, because it's part of life. But one thing I would direct everyone to is the idea of setting SMART goals. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but it's because we're filming live, I'm not going to remember all of the words, but it's like, so if you're setting a SMART goal, you want to be specific, measurable,
Attainable? Is it
attainable, thank you, realistic, and timely, right? And so I think really sort of digging into it using that SMART goal idea is a good idea. And I think you kind of just summed it up, Lauren. You said you're not gonna do a marathon right now. Now, what you can do is you could set a goal during the pandemic to run a marathon in a year, but then you've got to break that down, because you can run a marathon in a year, Lauren, but you know, you're not going to wait a year and then run the marathon. So you've got to back that up to now. So that means, like, in 6 months, you probably need to have the 13.1, the half marathon. And so what does that mean? Well, it means that I need to, you know, in 3 months from now, I should probably, basically you're just kind of working backwards until what you come down to is, well, I'm going to start by writing in my calendar that I'm going to walk 3 times a week. And then I'm going to try to increase that to 5 times a week within the next month. And then I'm going to increase my time. And that, you know what I mean? And so in that way, whether you're looking at a marathon way down the road, or if you're just looking for sort of what's my first step, if you're following that SMART goal timeline, then you're going to come up with something that's you want it to be specific enough that you know if you've done it or not. If it's vague, if it's like, well, I want to look good or feel good in the summertime, well, what does that mean to you specifically? Like what, and then how can you measure that? So that this is what it is, like this is how I'm going to know. You want it to be attainable because, we can all say, well, I want to look like that movie star that's been photoshopped, but that's not attainable because she doesn't even look like that, right? So you're looking for something that's realistic and timely, like I think that it's very possible for somebody who wants to lose 100 pounds to lose 100 pounds, but it's probably not healthy or realistic to think it's going to happen in a month. So, that's the kind of thing, and that regardless of whether it's a fitness goal or any other kind of goal, following that idea can give you something that's specific enough to be able to know if you're on target. And then so what that means is even if you kind of veer, then you can go, okay, well, it's here and I'm here. So what does that mean? Does that mean I need to figure out how to get back? Or does that mean I really want my goal to be over here now? But you have very specific metrics that you can play with and figure out, just like with your tracking. If you're tracking, then you have more information to know what to do with.
It's all data.
It is. It is.
I also think that one thing this pandemic has taught me is to allow myself a little bit more grace. I think we all need to kind of give ourselves a little bit of a break.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's just not going to be perfect right now. It's just not.
No, it's not.
And I think that, how does grace play into this? Because we're hard on ourselves.
And I think that grace has absolutely, like whether you're in pandemic or not, it's got to play into it. And this is another thing that we actually talked about in the workshop with the Women's Theater Festival, was the important element of having self-compassion. This idea that, it's so funny how our brains work sometimes, because the way, if we think of like a loved one, like our child or like our best friend or a family member, and if they came to us and they say, man, I screwed up and I just feel horrible. I'm such an idiot. The things that we would say to them are never the things that we say to ourselves in that same situation. Like our response to ourselves is oftentimes, you are a screw up. You're a total failure and you'll never be anything else. Like it's these horrible things that, can you imagine saying that to your daughter? No, like even just having that thought in my head, like that hurts. And so I think a lot of times we have come to believe, and this is maybe another cultural thing and a perfectionist thing, that is how we get better, right? We just got to be tough on ourselves. But the opposite is almost always true, is that we, that element of self-compassion is crucial for being able to move forward, and so if we can instead learn to be very aware of the negative self-talk that, we play in our heads, and then change that script, gosh, it makes such a difference, to go from, I can't believe I just screwed up, to go, you know what, I'm human, and this is something that happens because, people do it, like people mess up, and I
Mhm.
can move on from this. Like, this is something that is going to be okay, right? And that is going to allow us to take those steps forward. That grace that we give ourselves, where beating ourselves just keeps us in that negative feedback loop of, you're never going to do it, you're never going to make it, it's always going to be like this. So it's really a matter that grace is what pushes us forward out of that into the, yeah, I can do this, I'm gonna make it, you know.
Mhm.
So
I love that. I love that. Well, and I think I think even the things as parents we say to our children, I will say all growing up, my mom used to look at my sister and say, "You're the skinny one."
mhm.
And so I always had it in my mind that I wasn't. And I remember kind of thinking a few years ago, like, uh, what was that? What was that all about? And so it's not that my mom is trying to hurt me or anything. She loves me, but I think just being mindful of those, how we talk to ourselves, how we talk to our children, how we talk to each other as women, I think it's important.
It is, you know, and it's so hard because, like, hearing that, I'm like, oh gosh, you know, I have a friend who said, we're, you know, just talking about like just trying to do our best as parents and knowing that you're screwing up, and she's like, oh, they're going to be in therapy talking about us one day, we just don't know what thing it's going to be. You know?
What big? Yeah, I'm always like, huh, what are these kids going to talk about in therapy when I look at my children? Um,
Right, right.
so on your website, and I will put a link to the website, and when we're finished, and I repost this, and when I post it on the website, but you have virtual classes people can sign up for. There's the Facebook group, which is Folk Fitness Tribe. Is that what the Facebook group is called?
It is. It's our private Facebook group that typically, you know, like, people go in there once they do a thing with us, you know. So like, you've done a couple of challenges with us, and so we say, come on in. But if, you know, if there's anyone out there that just wants to be a part of that group for the encouragement, you know, I welcome you to come on in right now and then join us, you know, whenever you feel ready.
It's a very supportive group. A lot of theater people, so it's a very supportive group.
The theater group is growing for sure, which is fun.
And then on your website, I saw you also have something in the fitness store called 28 Days of Quarantine Exercise. So tell me a little bit about that, because that looked like it was something anybody could purchase, whether they wanted to jump into the virtual stuff or not.
It is. It's absolutely what anyone can purchase. But I'm glad you brought it up because it's probably good to kind of give a little blurb about it, so someone can know like if it's for them or not. So, you know, when I am under stress, you know, people have different responses, and my response under stress is just to do a lot of things. I've just got to keep doing and producing, and we're gonna have to power through, right? So that's me. And I don't know how to make bread. I did have a lot of people make me bread, which I appreciate, but I wasn't making the bread myself. So I was just trying to figure out how to move my business online. And so, along with creating the virtual classes, which anyone is welcome to try for free, what I did do, and I believe that this was a specific response to a couple of requests that I had from people that were interested. It is that I took a lot of boot camp work I had available just for that I had done before, and I like basically looked through my whole treasure trove and looked at like, what is something that would be possible for somebody to do alone and in their home with limited equipment. So, you know, there's no like sandbags and battle ropes that are part of these workouts. But I will say they are not they're not meant necessarily to be for like a beginner. You would need to come at it with some sort of experience with exercise, because they're not, it's also not sort of designed to sort of lead you through knowing how to do everything. So if I say, you know, this is going to be a burpee with 5 squats to press and blah blah blah, you got to know what that is, because there's not the explanation there. I've got other other programs and things that I do and personal training that would lead you through with what you need to do. But that's more of like a, here you go, I'm going to throw this at you and you can go do this in your house. So yeah,
I love that. And people can find that on your website.
yes. And I mean, I think there's my website, folkfitnessnc.com. And then if you're interested in the classes, you would eventually go, like, it would take you to another place to sort of sign up for that. But I would just say, you know, if any of this resonates with you, that, you know, listening, please reach out and let's just have a conversation, either via email or on the phone, and just talk about sort of what you're into and what you're looking for and how we can partner together, even if it's just a conversation, you know, even if it'd just be helpful to talk through some stuff.
Well, and you have a boot camp, you have stretch classes, which I think is my next step, is to start some of those classes. Um, and truly, I really do value this tribe of women, tribe of people that you have assembled. It's
Oh,
very motivating, and it's nice to know you're not alone during a pandemic. So
yeah. Well, Lauren, I'm so glad you found us. It's been great having you as part of the bingo challenge. Then I guess your first challenge with this was our walk to the beach challenge.
we walked to the beach. My husband thought it was ridiculous because I really I don't like the beach. I'm not a beach person. My husband and I actually lived on Hollywood Beach. Our apartment faced the beach. So our view was the beach, the water, the sand. We never went out there until we took our engagement picture. And the photographer said, you know, we should really take it on the beach. And this was like the first time we had gone to the beach in our backyard. So my husband thought it was very funny. We were walking virtually to the beach, but you know what? It kept me walking, kept me moving.
Yeah.
And it was a mile or 1.1 miles a day. So it was something I could wrap my brain around. It wasn't like,
Yeah.
let's walk 30 miles this week. It was like, so
Great.
it's been fun. And I think, you know, just getting motivated to move. And I think this whole pandemic has ebbed and flowed, you know, at least in my house. I've noticed, you know, at the beginning it was all about sitting on the couch and watching TV, because everybody was like, oh, you can make a difference by sitting on your couch and watching television. That's what you're supposed to do right now. Then we kind of went into this bread making phase, and now I feel like we're all kind of resolving, okay, this is a new normal, so
Yeah.
how do we live
Yeah, no, I feel that as just personally, and then I in my business feel that way as well. But we kind of went from this like, you know, what are we gonna do, to, you know, just kind of moving in this fog. And it's interesting because even just in the last couple of weeks, I've had a number of people reach out to me about personal training, which, you know, I've been busy with my classes, but it hasn't been a thing. And so now we're talking about like virtual training or socially distanced training outside. And it just feels like, you know, with the start of maybe school or fall, like we're all recognizing, okay, I can't eat bread forever. Like, so because this is clearly longer, you know, I think all of us,
It's a long-term thing.
like nobody in March was thinking that we were still going to be here in August, end of August. So I think it's just sitting in that it's like, okay, now I really need to figure out what to do with myself, because
What to do?
yeah,
I do want to ask you one last question. You
sure.
have children who are school-aged kids. A lot of people have children who have gone back to school online. Children are spending a lot of time on screens, more time than ever, which means that they're not moving. Um, can you talk to parents about how to make sure their kids get some sort of, I've seen it in my own house where I have to kind of say to my kids, okay, off the computer, and they're bigger, they're older, but I'll have to say off the computer, let's do something else. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, it's a big one for me. I mean, for probably most parents right now. And I mean, I was very sort of, I've wrestled with this whole idea of like, how do you regulate screen time and how do you know what the balance is, even before the pandemic, and now certainly. And I'll just, to be completely candid, I think part of it is, you know, first of all, we just have kids that like, this it's like water to them. So it's just very natural just to stay on the screen. But then I also see my own obsession and addiction to like always having my phone, and I don't want that, you know, like for me or for them, and it makes me even more like anxiety filled about this. And I you know I think the best thing that I could say simply is just that, like, if this is something that you see as a value to you to figure out, just like everything that we've been saying with exercise, to not give up on how to work it, and to know that you're probably going to, like, you know, talk to your kids and figure out a thing and say, this is what it is. And then that may work or may not work. And I've done that a lot with especially my older child, you know, my fourth grader. Even today, you know, she came to me because we've had a lot of discussion lately about, you know, I've said to her, you know, Kara said, I hate screens, because I feel like I'm just constantly, Lauren, saying, gotta get off screens, go do something, just go do something, just get off, you know. And so the other day, like I said, you know, I don't hate screens, Karis, I really don't. It's just about finding the balance in our life, right? So so just like, you know, we don't want to be, you know, doing, you know, something else all day, every day. Like it's the same with screens. And now we're about to enter into a time starting next week where you're already going to be on screens before you even choose to be on screens all day. So it's just got to look different in order to find that balance. So I think maybe part of it is entering into a conversation with them, and especially if they're older, letting them be a part of the decision-making process and the creative problem solving. And then trying a lot of things. I mean, I think we've done a lot of different things. I'm trying to model it and for them and with them, which is harder than you'd think it would be for me, because when I finish 2 classes and a personal training session, I don't want to move. So I want to come home and rest. And then, but if I don't, you know, then I'm not modeling that. So trying to find ways, just like you were talking about, to make it a regular part of their day is important. Last spring, I just mandated, you know, like I'm making up my own school schedule. We were all just kind of winging it. And so I just said, you know, we're starting with morning movement. You can give it a name, morning movement at 9 o'clock. And so no matter what, every day at 9, we did morning movement. And sometimes the kids were really into it, especially at first. And then after a while, they were really not into it. They're like, I don't want to do morning movement. And it was just like, no, this is what we do. Like, it's not, this is just what we do. We do morning movement. And so you can pick what we do. We can go for a walk. We can go for a bike ride. We can put on yoga. What is that? There's a really great yoga for kids, and someone can probably know what it is and write it down. But, you know, we would pick different things. We, you know, could dance. There was one day I got all my boxing gear out and I was like, I'll teach you how to box, you know, but something, right? The baseline is do what you want, but during this time. And so there's other times when I don't necessarily do it with them, but I'm like, go outside. You got to figure it out, you know, or, I think tonight, Patrick had a board meeting, and then I had this, and the kids were gonna just have this long expanse of time that I figured was probably in large part going to be filled up by a video. And so I was like, okay, here's what's going to happen. You're going to eat dinner, and then you're going to run the block, and then you're going to come back and take a shower, and then you can get it. And so it's just like, this is what you're going to do. So if you want to do the movie, then you got to run around the block first, you know? So I think some of it is just figuring out what works for your family and your rhythms, but making it not necessarily in like an adversarial militant way, but making it a non-negotiable, like making it this is just what we do, I think can be helpful. You know, like we are not, it's an identity thing. We're not the kind of person that's just going to stay on screens all day. Sometimes we're going to get out and we're going to move, because that's who we are, you know?
I love that. So I started introducing a word of the month last month, and this month's word is resilience, which you said a little, and I think it's in some ways an overused word right now in the time of COVID, but what does resilience mean to you?
Oh, wow. I think comes to my mind the most would just be being able to bounce back. Sure, you know, there, you could say a lot more, but that's just the first thing that comes to my mind is, you know, well, I'll say this. Patrick and I have both become totally obsessed. Our new sort of binge watch show that we're into right now. We've only got 2 more episodes. It's called The World's Toughest Race. You heard of this? Mm-hmm. Holy moly. So like these groups of like groups of 4 on teams, 66 teams that are going like a gazillion miles through Fiji. They got to paddle and they got to mountain bike and hike and rappel. I mean, it's nuts. And like, to me, like hearing their stories is just about resilience. You know, it's like all of them are like, they knew going into this race, you're going to get beat up. You're going to get torn down. You're going to not sleep, you know, for like days. It's like an 11-day race. And that's just, you know, it's kind of like that baseline. Well, that's just what it is. And you just keep pushing through, you know? And so I don't think that necessarily means, you know, it doesn't also involve grace and space and even emotion and room to grieve. Like, I don't think that those things are separate from resilience. But it does mean that at the end of the day, what you know is going to happen after you grieve and recognize the trauma and give yourself the compassion, it does mean that you're still going to just keep moving, you know, and mentally, you know, that's just what it is. Like, I'm gonna just keep trucking on. You know, I would say that's kind of even this attitude, like even saying that makes me think of my dad is, you know, that's kind of from his, like, kind of the identity that he puts into our family. It's like, we're just going to win. That's what he'd say. You're a winner. You're just going to win. And I don't think he didn't mean that necessarily in a competitive way, like you're going to beat this other person. It's as a person, you're not going to stop. Like, you don't lose if you don't stop, right? As long as you're still going, the game is still being played. And I guess to me, that idea is resilience. As long as you just keep moving, you're still in the game.
I love that. And it's interesting to me, you know, the reason I chose the word resilience is my daughter and I were talking about what resilience means to her. And I realized at 17, resilience means a very different thing than it does when you're 51 years old. So I thought, you know, we're going to explore this word. So thank you for that. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
So if you want to find Niki online, folkfitnessnc.com,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I will put links in the notes. If you joined us late, the entire broadcast will live on Facebook. And then in a few days, it'll be on the RDU on Stage Facebook page, our RDU on Stage website. And just thank you so much, Niki. I've really enjoyed this. I've enjoyed playing the bingo game with you this month, walking to the beach with you last month.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're going to have us doing next month, but whatever it is, I'm in.
Well, great, Lauren, you're awesome, and I'm so glad that you joined us, and it's been a real pleasure having you in the group, and then just having this conversation tonight.
And I promise you, I will not post Fruit Loops or M&Ms. I was like, what can Niki Torres is trying to kill me. So what can I do to torture her right back?
Well, okay, so we have to explain that to people that are wondering. So one of the blocks in our bingo for the month is to post a picture of a colorful plate of food, right? And so I'll call her out, Elaine Patron, posted her picture for her block with a giant plate full of colorful M&Ms. And so my response is, well, that is 100% within the realm of the block. So touche. But I will say this, I went back and I really looked at the block later, and I thought, I could probably get around the whether or not you would call it food. Like, if it's totally processed. But We won't. I won't mince words. We won't go down that. But yeah.
It's all good and it's all fun, and that's what it's all about. So thank you for what you do. And I hope to see you in person soon, but if not, we'll just keep seeing each other online, and I look forward to taking the classes, kind of taking the next step.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great, Lauren. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for watching. On Thursday, we are going to have an episode of Torn, Theater on Racist Negativity, and a friend of yours who you jumped off the side of a building with, Heather Strickland. She will be part of that panel discussion. So come back and join us for that.
Right. Well, I'm just gonna throw this out there, Lauren. We were jumping off a building. It was either the end of August or the beginning of September, and so, if our world is back in shape next year, you too could join us jumping off that building. It's creative movement.
Jumping off buildings. My husband, if he were watching tonight, he'd laugh so hard. My husband was a caver when we met, and I was like, oh, I'll go caving with you, not knowing anything I was in for. And the night before we went on this cave trip, he sat me down and he said, okay, do you want to be strapped to a harness as we push you off the cliff, or do you just want to shimmy off the edge? I was like, neither one of those options sounds agreeable. How about staying home and you tell me about it afterwards? So, but I will sit at the bottom and watch you and Heather rappel. Anyway, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining us, and I will see you Thursday night. And Nikki, I will see you online.
See you then.
Good night.